Kamala Harris made debate night her own. President Trump was mentioned more last night than the night before. Biden endured some body blows by the other candidates, and of course there were a couple of others on the debate night stage that we have to mention.
So, Team Rising is here. Jennifer Holdsworth is Democratic strategist, Senior VP of Issues Management for MWWPR, Public Affairs. Cassie Smedile is the RNC's Deputy Communications Director. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Big night last night. I think one of the major takeaways was Senator Kamala Harris's breakout moments on the stage. Let's take a listen to how she quieted down all of her rivals.
Hey guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes.
Good preparation from her. She obviously had that as a canned
Can we just
line.
say it?
Yeah.
It was pretty badass.
Yeah, I mean, it was a well-canned line. I know you're a Buttigieg person yourself. How do you assess her major breakout moments? I mean, that's what everybody's talking about this morning.
Yeah, she definitely had some major breakout moments. That's the best way to describe them. She comported herself really well. I think she got in all of the lines that she wanted to get in. I think she got in all of the hits that she wanted to get in. And to her credit, really well done. I mean, VP Biden had a target on his back last night.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of the candidates there were going to try to rattle them. It's unfortunate that it had to be at his expense because he has a lot to offer this conversation, especially as we head into the season where we really are going against Donald Trump and not each other. But I think Kamala Harris did what she had to do last night to break out. She had been lagging. Her campaign has been struggling to sort of get their message out. It's a really good message. It's a really inspiring message. She is also a once-in-a-generation candidate, and she had to make a name for herself last night. She did that, but it was unfortunate that it had to be at the expense of VP Biden.
But I think primaries are tough for a reason, right? Like, we want to see these candidates go through the paces so that whether you're on the Republican side or the Democratic side, when your party's having a primary, you want to get the person who's a little battle-tested to show up in the fall. The last thing you want is somebody who just kind of got feathered all the way through and they're not ready.
Well, I agree with you in that sense, but it all rang to me as a little old school, a little old-fashioned, I would say. When Donald Trump got on stage in 2015 and then in 2016, it was refreshing. It was unrehearsed. He said what we were all thinking, but in a way that we didn't expect anyone to actually say. Yes, I think that was a good line from Kamala Harris, but as we said, it was rehearsed.
It was rehearsed.
Her moments were planned, and that's not going to work when you get to the general election.
I think that,
Donald Trump was famous for saying you're fired like 45,000 times on television.
Well, I think
that was rehearsed.
I think that's a real difference.
It's more about is a rehearsed line going to work against Donald Trump? Will it work against sleepy Joe Biden, which we'll get to? I mean, yeah, I think it will. But will it work against Donald Trump?
Look,
I don't think so.
I think there's a difference between unrehearsed and spelled incorrectly, right? And names of just making up words that don't exist in the English language. So that's not generally the Democrats' MO. But I think that there were a lot of refreshing perspectives last night. I don't hide my bias in any way, shape, or form. I'm very publicly supporting Mayor Pete. I think that he did equally, if not better, than Senator Harris. He had an incredible night. And I think that a lot of people see why everybody looks to him when they want to rise above politics as usual. Senator Harris had an incredible night, but she's also a senator that is entrenched in Washington, talking about the same issues over and over again. Mayor Pete's not. One of the major themes of his campaign is let's make Washington look a little bit more like our well-run cities and towns across America, not the other way around. Mayor Pete also had an extremely trying and difficult week trying to bring his community together.
He had a good answer.
After a police-involved shooting. He took responsibility for the parts that he absolutely had control over. He tried to calmly explain how an investigation like this goes, but he still has a lot of work to do in several communities, very specifically the Black community. But he acknowledged that last night, which is why I think people saw a leader telling the truth, which is what we don't see on the other side.
Well, another thing I want to get to is just how much Donald Trump was a focus in last night's debate compared to the first one. I believe we have some sound of all the candidates talking about the president.
The first thing I would do is make sure that we defeat Donald Trump. Period.
Democrats and Americans around the country have one question for their nominee, and that is who can beat Donald Trump in 2020? That is the right question.
And I believe we need to build a broad coalition of Americans to beat Donald Trump
we need a nominee who has the ability to prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, and I will do that.
I thought it was fascinating because the night before, Cassie, nobody had mentioned really the president. Mitch McConnell was the main bogeyman, and there was a lot of intra-party fighting. Last night we had the intra-party fighting, but the target was squarely not just on Joe Biden, but it was also on President Trump.
Yeah, maybe they were trying to all play for that general election spot, but interestingly enough, they also gave President Trump a lot more fodder when it comes to that. That moment where they all raised their hands to say that they were willing to have taxpayers pay for illegal immigrants to get health care. That's a moment that will not soon be forgotten.
Yeah.
And then just before that, some of them had said, I also think we should make it illegal for Americans to have private health insurance. In a nutshell, that's the priorities of the Democrat Party today.
We were
not going to play
We were
well.
really tracking that this morning. I think that is a landmark moment in the Democratic Party. It will come back to bite them dramatically in the election. Does Mayor Pete worry about that? I mean, coming from a state like Indiana, this is not a popular position to provide public benefits to illegal immigrants. Yeah.
No, he doesn't worry about it. And I think if you saw, there was a tally that came out about which candidates mentioned the president the most times. And if I'm talking specifically about Mayor Pete, he was 1 or 2 times, where some of the other candidates were more like 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And I won't talk about just Mayor Pete specifically, but broadly in the Democratic Party, we have never been about shying away from an issue because it's morally correct. We have to make the case to the American people that these are the American values that we need to return to. And not only does it make economic sense for that to be the policy for America, but it makes moral sense. And that is a line that we seem to have given up in America right now.
Let's talk about the politics of this for a second, because I actually disagree with all of this. I actually think the first night was the right way to go. Everybody knows Donald Trump. Everybody knows what's wrong with Donald Trump, especially Democrats who are paying attention. Anybody sitting up watching a Democratic primary debate, at 9 o'clock at night, they're really familiar on MSNBC. They're really familiar with Donald Trump. The question is, what about you? What about you as a candidate? What are you offering the country? What's the direction you're offering? And I think that the first night when they started having that conversation, that was very important for those candidates to get their messages out.
Maybe, but I would say no. What was missing from the conversation is what about you, the American people? Hillary Clinton made the mistake of what about you, me, the candidate. And so, I get that they have a tough thing right now because they're trying to introduce themselves to the American people. Most people don't know who the great majority of these folks are. But what we didn't hear, and again, what Donald Trump is so effective at doing is saying, you, the person who has felt disenfranchised, who has felt ignored, who has felt belittled and talked down to by the Washington elite and the political establishment.
You think Donald Trump is self-effacing? Is that what you're arguing?
My point is that he speaks to the American people with them, not at them. And there's been a lot of condescending conversation that's happened over the last 2 nights, and that does not resonate with a great majority
Jennifer,
of
does
American
Donald Trump keep the spotlight off of himself? And
No, I mean, he's probably the most self-absorbed person that exists in the United States or internationally. But be that as it may, he likes to talk a lot about the problems that Americans face, but he doesn't actually like to solve any of them. So
I think a lot of people disagree with you on that.
But be that as it may, I agree with you. I think the first night was good in terms of not talking about Donald Trump. Democrats lose this race in 3 ways. If we make this entire election about Donald Trump, if we make this entire election about immigration, or we make this entire election about 2016. Those are the 3 ways that the Democrats lose the election. I think that you saw a variety of policy prescriptions talked about over the last 2 nights. That is how we're going to bring the case to the American people, and that's how we're going to win in 2020.
We should also talk, the vice president is obviously the biggest name on the stage. He's polling highest. He had some really bad moments in the debate last night. Cassie, how is the RNC looking at the Vice President Joe Biden after last night's debate? Obviously it hurt him it's likely to hurt him in the polls and with African American voters, but general feelings about where the race stands, and he looks like the ones that I would want to run against if I were Trump.
Well, to be clear, we'll take pick of the litter.
Right.
We'll take anybody, and we feel good about that. But I think you do make a good point. Joe Biden has a lot of coming back to do because he felt a little out of practice. Even his the moment where Eric Swalwell, the pass the torch moment, he sort of settled into a stump speech that felt like something out of 2007, 2008. And I think that's the problem when you have this whole new 2 nights worth of people that weren't in the political spotlight, most of them, except for Bernie Sanders, back when Joe Biden was last running for president. You gotta bring more to the table. The times have changed, the talk has changed, the way we talk has changed. But again, I would say nobody is up there who can hold a candle to the way that Donald Trump speaks with the American people. And when he's in the spotlight, that's a big contrast.
Jim, we've got a bunch of candidates who are running who kind of do represent that next generation of leadership. It's interesting, Swalwell wants to jump over my generation, Generation X, and go straight to the millennials. But, you know, from Kamala Harris, exactly, your bosses, your guys in millennial too. But there's a whole generation of people out there who are a little bit younger who I think are talking about taking us forward somewhere as a party, not trying to take us back to an earlier, happier time. Do you think that forward message has some real resonance in the Democratic primary process?
I think that it does, and I think that it's going to resonate in the general election. I think that there's going to be a significant contrast in not just the generation that's running, but the generation of support for the policies that are being put forward. So I do think VP Biden had a rough night. I actually have no doubt that he's going to recover. I think that he had the target on his back. He knew that a lot of the other candidates were going to go after him. I think that he needs to prosecute the case about what a successful presidency the Obama administration was. And he tried to do that a little bit last night. But what I don't think that he can do is say that he has to run his administration in the same exact way we started running administrations in 2008. That would be regressive. That I don't think would play well with the electorate. But whether it's VP Biden, whether it's Mayor Pete, it's about the policies that are appealing to the generation who supplied all of the military members to fight the battles after 9/11. It's about the generation who's going to be on the business ends of climate change in the next 20 to 50 years. It's about the generation that still hasn't recovered from the economic meltdown and the housing crisis. So yes, it is about representative politics. Who is going to carry that message towards the American people? But if you have a messenger who's talking about those issues, that's going to work too.
Well, the final thing we have to get to is
this is the fun part.
The fun part is we have some sound of some of the candidates that we haven't necessarily talked about, but who were fun to watch last night.
My first act in foreign policy, we're breaking up with Russia and making up with NATO.
Ms. Williamson,
My
with the last
first call
word.
is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you are so on, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and sir, love will win.
Love will keep us together.
I mean, it's nice. It's a nice message. I mean, like, who could just? Also, she has like a 1940s Mid-Atlantic accent. I'm like, where did this come from?
It was sort of changing all throughout
Yeah, it really
the night,
did.
actually. As we were getting to know her, we were like, oh, which version are we getting to know? But I know a lot of people who say, you know, Marianne Williamson, let's keep her on stage.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
So we had Williamson, we had Yang, we had Eric Swalwell, who had a couple of these lines that were talking about rehearsed lines. I mean, he had the real rehearsed lines. How do you prepare a candidate for, I call them the free radicals. I mean, you've got these people who can just do anything or say anything at any point. Like, what's your advice to candidates when that dynamic could happen on a stage?
I'm a Democrat. I'm very proud of the way my party performed last night, and anybody on that stage will make a better president than Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
I love that. I know. I saw a couple Republicans saying, "Let's all donate as much as possible to Marianne
I think she's going to make the next debate.
Let's keep her up there."
I'm like, that performance.
She will. She's super
You know what?
popular. She's really very popular.
She's stealing the conspiracy of love conversation from Cory Booker.
That's true.
If anybody should be worried about her nipping at his heels, it's him. But no, I mean, look, she was added a fun layer to the debate last night, and I'm glad that she was overwhelmingly and positive in her message of love, and I look forward to the next debate.
I kind of enjoy it. Yeah.
Can I get you on this though before we go on the first night? So you didn't have a favorite in the first night. You didn't have anybody in there you were rooting for. What did you think about the first debate night with Booker and Beto and Warren and some of the others? Klobuchar.
Yeah, I mean, look, full disclosure, I have an unbelievable affection for Cory Booker. I'm from New Jersey. He was my senator. I had the great pleasure of working on his re-election campaign in 2014. I think that he would make a stellar president. I also actually think that if anybody is poised to break out from the mid to the bottom of the pack, it's him. He is building an absolute army in the early states. I think that everyone is going to be shocked in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and Nevada when he comes out towards the top in the vote, because the organizers that he has hired in those 4 states are incredible. I've worked with a lot of them. So do not sleep on Cory Booker. He is the one to watch. In terms of the debate itself, I thought Elizabeth Warren had an unbelievable night. I think that she was calm, cool, collected. She focused on policy. The one thing that she has to be careful, though, is to not veer into Bernie Sanders territory and say, I have a plan for that, I have a plan for that, I have a plan for that revolution, but have no actual steps to get the plan passed. I think that is what the American people are looking for right now. Lots of big ideas coming out on both sides. I happen to think our ideas are better for the American people, but lots of big ideas coming out on both sides. Not a lot of steps to get those policies accomplished. That's what we need to focus on. Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker had absolutely the best nights the first night of the debate.
Final thoughts, Cassie?
Well, you say lots of ideas coming out. We say lots of results that have come out of the last 2.5 years, and you want to talk about an infrastructure. They've got a bruising primary battle ahead of them. Meantime, the RNC and the president's campaign, we've got tens of thousands of people that we've trained just the last week.
And millions of dollars,
millions
which are flowing
more dollars that our friends at the DNC.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks.
Real talk, I think Democrats should be nervous about what the Republican and the RNC are up to. I think they've got a wide open field, a lot of time, and a lot of money.
I agree.
They can
we
really
have
be prepared
a long
for the
way to go to
Democrats
catch up on digital.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Some final reflections before we go.